Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 215 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am the Orange Tank, Neelan, with you as always, and with me as always are the Red and Green Tanks, Kellen and Mark. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
Hello, good evening, and good night.
Thank you. That's my very best radio voice. Just for you, Kellen.
I was trying to do my outro so that we could stop recording. And
I see. This week on the Board Game Barrage podcast, things are really moving quickly around here because we are driving. We're driving. Well, some of us are driving. Mark doesn't have to go very far. We're going to Las Vegas for Dice Tower West.
How do the locals say it, Mark?
How do we say it here in the Vagueland?
Yeah, Vagueland. Wow,
Yeah, we call it Vagueland.
No,
wow,
you
I've
don't.
never heard that.
Don't ever say Las Vegas to somebody who's from here, because we will get off.
What?
You call it Vagueland.
I think we're being
Vagueland?
goofed.
Yeah.
I think we're being goofed hard.
Oh,
He's been
okay,
there for
well,
like
go
35
ahead.
minutes.
Go ahead and say Las Vegas to somebody and see what happens. That's not how the locals say it.
I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, not the not calling it Las Vegas, but wait, is Vagueland a thing at all? No? Okay. I believed you. I could see that being like a little weird thing.
That's because Vegas has taught me to be a top-notch salesman.
Just imagine Neelan trying to like buddy with someone at like a local restaurant.
There was no scenario where I was going to walk up to someone and be like, hey, how's things going in Vagueland?
You like it here too? I love it here in Vagueland.
Yeah. Hello, fellow Vaguelanders. Yeah, no. But that's what's happening this week. We're all heading to or staying in Las Vegas for Dice Tower West, which means things are really busy around here. So this is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode as we're all getting ready to get going. But we're still going to be covering some of the games that we've been playing this week. And those are Yokohama from Mark, Final Girl from myself, and Kellen's going to be telling us about Mystic Paths. Then we're going to do a quick little hot question in the second half of the episode and get going. Cars ready to go. Kellen's
Fueled up.
Set.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Let's
guys
get
ever bring
right
snacks?
into... Oh, there will be plenty of snacks.
What snacks
All
you
of the
gonna bring?
black licorice that we can find.
Kellen, you're going to stop by the gas station and get some good coffee?
No, I only drink pink coffee now.
Let's get right into it with the first game, Yokohama from Mark.
Yeah, so I finally got a chance to play Yokohama, which is a pretty massive, in a lot of different ways, worker placement game released back in 2016 by Hisashi Hayashi. This is his most popular design, although he's also designed Trains, Metro X, and the underrated Sail to India, which is a really cool small box game that I like. In Yokohama, for those who haven't played it, you'll start with a number of cubes, which are your workers, along with your president piece. On your turn, your typical choice is going to involve placing either 3 workers, each on a different location on the board, or 2 workers on one space on the board. And then you're going to move your president. But
those spaces have to be next to each other.
they do have to be next to each other. So you're moving your president.
Forgot about that, Mark.
I did forget about that.
There's adjacency in Yokohama. Have you ever been there?
Must have been. I've never been to Yokohama. I assume you have been many times.
Oh, thank you for asking. I have been to Yokohama.
Almost as much as your native New York. Anyhow, so you will be moving your president along a path that has been created by your workers, so you must be able to get to your final spot through a string of your workers that you've previously placed. And then wherever you move your president, the number of pieces in that spot indicates how strong the action is. So if you move your president and then you've previously placed only 1 worker, then it's performed at a strength of 2. If during the course of the game you've placed 4 workers and then you move your president there, you perform that action at a strength of 5, which is like the maximum strength. The spots you'll be visiting, and in fact what makes up the game board in Yokohama, is a number of smaller boards that are placed together sort of pyramid style, so that every game in Yokohama is theoretically set up differently. So in one game, the fish markets where you get the fish resource, unsurprisingly, might be close together and sort of centralized. And in the next game, the fish markets might be on complete opposite ends of the playing area. So you'll be visiting these spots to gather resources, to acquire orders, which is sort of like the recipe fulfillment part of the game. You can get technologies, which give you either passive abilities or some other kind of bonus. And whenever you do an action in one of these locations, if you do it at level 4 or 5, So at the stronger levels, you'll not only get a better action, but you'll also be able to place your stores, which are equivalent to sort of houses, which give you victory points or other bonuses. And then furthermore, every game you're going to have some shared goals that you and your opponent are trying to get to. The first person who accomplishes the goals gets a slightly higher number of victory points. So there's a little bit of a race aspect to that. So I've played Yokohama a few times now, and I've enjoyed all the plays. The game can feel a little bit close to multiplayer solitaire because you've got a lot of things that you need to worry about, that you're setting up, you have recipes to fill, and these goals you're trying to do. Though one thing, as Kellen mentioned, is that your president has to go through your own workers to get to a spot, and your president can't share the same spot as another president. So if somebody else has moved their president to activate a spot, you cannot go to that spot on that turn. And if you want to place a worker where an opponent has placed a president, then you have to pay them a yen, and a yen is a valuable resource in the game. All resources are sort of hard to come by, so...
Yen is money.
Yen is, yes, sorry. Yes, that's right. I forgot to... I wasn't sure about that. I was meant to ask you, Kellen, before the show.
I'm glad I could help.
Yeah, what is this yen that I keep reading about in this game?
Money.
But, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Just saying that again, maybe...
Yeah, no, it'll sink in. Third
time.
time's be a charm. If you could do it
great.
one more time.
Money.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you. So there is that adversarial aspect, but it's not really adversarial. It's sort of the Agricola style, blocking somebody from getting to an action. But I found myself blocked out of actions at crucial times and taking actions to block opponents at times, enough so that it wasn't sort of a trivial part of the game. It is something that is, somebody setting up a move and you put your president where they want to go, and it can be quite a spanner in their works.
That's actually really interesting to you say that, because I've only played Yokohama once on Board Game Arena, and I think that the experience of a game being multiplayer solitaire is only exacerbated when you're playing it asynchronously like that. So I think a lot of what you're describing about utilizing workers as effective blockings was kind of not lost on me entirely, but it wasn't something I was thinking about for a large majority of the game.
Right.
And it kind of makes me rethink on that game of it a lot, where I'm kind of maybe intrigued to replay this with that as a more forefront of mind consideration.
Yeah, because you can sort of see your opponents. You don't really have to be super carefully watching them. You can just sort of see, okay, he's placed his third worker there. He's getting ready to move his president there to take a big action. Do I need to jump in now and forestall him, or maybe take what my opponent was trying to do? It's like a lot of other worker placement games. There is a trade-off, because by forestalling their action, you may be messing up your own plans. But it is often enough a good move that it's, again, not a trivial thing. It's something that you do want to consider doing. And when it's done to you, it does really sometimes mess you up. You can always get around it, presuming there's more rounds in the game and it's not the end of the game. But it is something that is a consideration, an important part of the game, I think. So I do enjoy Yokohama, though I have to admit a lot of it comes down to identifying a loop in a number of buildings you want to make sure you want to hit. And you want to try to figure out preferably a bunch of buildings that are close together, and just sort of really exploiting the loop. And that's fun. That sort of efficiency puzzle can be fun. You see, okay, there are a number of orders that I could get, and they all need fish, and here's where the fish is, but here's the technology spot, and I can make a nice loop here where I can go to the bank, get a quick yen or two, which gives me time to place more workers on these other spots where I really want to build up my action. So it's a satisfying sort of efficiency puzzle in that respect. That being said, I've played this on BGA, and I have not yet played it in real life. And as much as I enjoyed it, I have to say that the number of pieces in this game and the number of components does sort of scare me away from playing it in real life, because there's just a lot. You have the pieces that make up the board, the modular board. You have your cubes, you have your president, you have all these houses and buildings that you have. You've got a number of different resources that are all their own chits. And I've seen this game on tables at game nights I've been at, and it's a beast. It's like a big sprawling beast. I know, Kellen, that you brought this back up all the way back on episode 71, which was our hate-love episode, as a game that you liked, that everything said that you shouldn't, but you do like it. I was just mildly surprised that you enjoyed it.
Well, when I was a young child, I liked to visit Istanbul. And then when I grew up, I realized that my heart was in Yokohama. This, for whatever reason, for me, feels like adult Istanbul. So that sort of always changing board really is providing the sort of game-to-game variety.
Yeah.
It is a huge beast when you set it out on the table. I remember I taught it to my younger sister who had traveled with me to Yokohama. That was the throughput. Like, she'd never played a heavy Euro game. And like, we got like halfway through the rules and, you know, her eyes were sort of glazed over, and we had a good game of it. I own Yokohama. It is a lower interaction Euro. That is not to say no interaction. And I do think you lose a lot playing this online. You know, it's like you sometimes don't even know what another player has just done on their last turn.
Sure.
When you turn on Board Game Arena.
Yeah.
And in this one, people are inching closer to places that you might want to go. And like, it is beigey. You should look at this one. I do think that Euro players owe it to themselves to try it. It is a interesting one, and I think it's very clean. It's very good. I would be happy to play this in real life. It does run a little long sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree. If you like worker placement games, you like working out sort of like efficiency puzzles, efficiency loops, I think Yokohama is a strong contender in a crowded field of worker placement. I just think I might recommend the BGA implementation, although Kellen has made a lot of good points to playing it in real life. But yeah, it just seems like a lot. But it's a good game. It's definitely a good game, and that is Yokohama by Hisashi Hayashi.
So I wanted to talk about Final Girl by Van Ryder Games. This is a spiritual successor to a game that Mark spoke about a little while back called Hostage Negotiator, but with a completely revamped rule set, completely different production, and a very, very different theme. The premise of Final Girl is that you are the final girl. Like, this is a horror trope where you are the last standing survivor in a sort of slasher movie environment where you have a villain that is roaming around an environment, killing victims, and you are the hero of the story that ends up making it all the way through to the credits, effectively. In Final Girl, what you buy is a core box, which just has the base components and the rules, and then any number of what are called film boxes, which are just modular maps and villains that you can play against. And what's kind of cool about this system is every one of these film boxes that you buy can be combined with the elements of any other film box. So every film box is one location, the area, the map that you're playing on, the items, some special rules, as well as a villain, which has its own special rules, varying amounts of health, special attacks, special abilities, that sort of thing. And you can mix and match them as much as you see fit. You also get 2 final girls in each box. And again, you can use any girl with any location, with any villain. So there's a lot of variety if you have even 2 of these boxes alone. What you're doing in Final Girl is you are playing cards from your hand on any given turn. Every card's an action, whether that's walking, searching for items, attacking, and those cards immediately trigger dice rolls based on like a horror track. So most of the time this will be 2 dice. You throw the dice that will determine how effective your actions are. There is some mitigation in that. Some of the faces have the ability to turn fails into successes by discarding cards, but otherwise your effectiveness is going to be determined by how many successes you roll. Once you've played out your turn, you can use any remaining time you have, which is kind of your main resource, to buy new cards to go into your hand at the end of the game. And any cards that you played are out of your hand for the next turn. So you're not able to buy them back until a turn later. So it's this constant rotation of cards coming in and out of your hand that you constantly have to be repurchasing. Because once you've used one of these cards, it's effectively gone. You only get it back if it's a free card a turn later, or if you buy it back on a future turn. So it's a balance of taking actions you need, using the time you have left to get new cards, to move around this map, rescue victims before they get killed, and before the killer gets too powerful that they kill you. Or you kill the villain, in which case you win. I think that the presentation of this game and the way that it looks laid out on the table with these maps, with these villains, with the variety of the art is really, really cool. And I think that if you are more inclined to be a fan of tropey horror, I think that you'll dig this. I think it's satisfying that theme and what you want from that theme really, really, really well. I was super bummed out by just how frustrating I found it a lot of the time. More often than not, you'll set yourself up for a cool turn, even by buying, say, an expensive card. roll the dice and get double blanks. And in that case, there's nothing you can do about that. There are some cards you can purchase which allow you to re-roll, but you have to assume you have bought one of those, prepped yourself up for that accordingly. And that's fine in and of itself, because that is a result that you have to be prepared for. Like, hey, you can't assume that every time you roll the dice, it's going to be a success. But I kind of just found that it didn't give you enough options to satisfyingly mitigate the dice in a way that felt really great. I think one of the best ways I can describe my frustration with this is kind of very quickly talking about the most recent game I played of this, where from the get-go, I literally was rolling so terribly in the early game that I was just like, you know what, this is probably a scrub. The ghost has killed like 5 victims, has now powered up to the point that I can move halfway across the board and kill people. I kind of just felt like almost, I may as well just re-roll this and start it again. But I kind of pushed through because I wasn't feeling that strongly about just tearing it down and setting it back up, that I just pushed through with the scenario, which was to search for these locations for a character and then exit. And as I went through that, I kind of got to the point where by chance the ghost had moved far enough away from me that it wasn't a threat. I searched a couple of times, found the character by luck in the location I was at, and then just immediately exited the arena. And like that combination of this didn't feel like it was going my way for a huge amount of time and then just dramatically swung in the other direction, which felt really unsatisfying, kind of soured me on the whole thing. And, you know, this is the 4th or 5th time I've played this, and I just don't know that I've had any substantially great highs from it. It kind of feels like an exercise in frustration a lot of the time and just whittling away at the system until you just happen to like overcome it. I get the appeal, and I think again that the way that they are selling this, the format of the film boxes is really, really clever. I just don't see myself returning to it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I have not played Final Girl. I've only played the game that was based on Hostage Negotiator. And I share a lot of your concerns. I haven't really found myself interested in revisiting it very often since my review of it. I think the itch, at least, that Hostage Negotiator scratches is the sort of, it's going to be a really tough game that I could just get messed up on the dice, and if I succeed, it's both through my gameplay and the luck. It just feels like things have to align, and there's some appeal in that where it's just like everything has to go right for it to work.
Yeah.
And you just have to make it despite the odds. But you know, like you're saying, when you roll the blanks and there's really nothing you could do, you might have set yourself up as perfectly as possible and you just roll the dice badly. That is frustrating. And if the game, at least Hostage Negotiator, was any longer, it would be like a deal breaker.
Yeah.
But I think that the quickness of it just puts it on the side where it's acceptable for me. But I 100% understand the negatives for sure.
I think one thing that actually works against Final Girl, based on what you're saying about Hostage Negotiator, is although that the multi-box system is clever, sourcing components from 3 different boxes, including cards that you're shuffling together and then having to like separate those all out and put them back into those 3 different boxes, right, kind of makes setup and tear down a lot more of a beast than I imagine Hostage Negotiator is, in a way that kind of just felt very tedious to have to set up and to break out, which is not what you want from a solo game. Like it just,
but isn't that the whole thing?
I mean, it's definitely part of the appeal, but I think that the trade-off that it makes for setup is maybe a little bit much. Like, I love the idea of, oh, take this map, take this character, take this thing, and mix them all together. But the actual physical reality of going through the process of grabbing all of those things and then separating them out again, that's a little bit tedious. It's a weird case of where, like, the idea is super cool, but like in practice, I found it a little bit more irritating than I wanted. I will say also this, like, you know, I get the appeal of, yeah, I'm going to keep hitting this until I beat it. Even in a game that is largely luck-based, I get that. I don't know that if I just had a weird run, but I won 3 of those 5 games of Final Girl. So it didn't seem like I even had the drive to be like, man, I'm just going to keep...
Right.
I'm going to keep hitting this until, because I can feel like I'm close to winning. It just wasn't hitting the right edge of satisfying to me, even when I was winning it.
That's very braggadocious, Nealon.
Maybe I'm just that good. I think that you could look at what Final Girl is thematically, and even based on that description, you'll be able to tell if this is something that has a place for you. I would say that if you are only an infrequent solo gamer like myself, I think you might find this similarly frustrating, unless the theme is like really, reaching out to you. But I think that in the realm of pure solo, there's something neat and novel about this, and it's definitely worth looking into if that theme shouts out to you at all. That is Final Girl, which was generously provided to us as a review copy by Van Ryder Games.
So we all had a chance to play Mystic Paths at PAX Unplugged, and I have since purchased a copy and have played it a few more times. This is a word game, party game. Are all party games word games and vice versa? We may never know, but this is a word and party game where you are wizards, and the theme means nothing. Don't pay any attention to the theme. You are all standing around on the outside of a board filled with words with connecting paths between different words, and these are randomly assigned. And on your turn, you are looking at a secret path of where your wizard will go. So him or her will start in one path and then move to the next one all the way around until you get to 10. And you are trying to get the entire table in the main mode of the game to guess your path. And you do this with a set of cards. So you have 4 cards, and you with 2 words on each card, and you have to place those words out and relate one word to each number. So the first place my wizard needs to go is tall. The second place my wizard needs to go is power, etc. The third place. The only modifier you can make there is you can put a not in front of any word, so not tall or not powerful. And then everyone else at the table has to sit there and go, okay, so Kellen is connected to 3 different words, and those words are paint, Napoleon, and the Forbidden City. So which one of those is tall? And then they go, Kellen's an idiot. None of those things are tall. But if we go to the next one, if Kellen was dumb enough to think that the Forbidden City was tall, what did he mean with the second one by powerful? Look, there's electricity. That might be connected to powerful. So the type of thinking that you're doing in this game feels in some ways similar but different to Codenames. Similar but worse to Codenames. but still, you don't use each clue in a vacuum. You evaluate them with 1 and 2 and 3, right? Because you may say, I know that 3 has to be this word, but how do I make the path to get there? And then what you do is if you're wrong, you stop immediately and you mark an incorrect guess. And then the next round, you give 3 more clues. So you'd be giving an extra clue for the one that they got wrong or the 2 that they got wrong. And that determines how quickly you can get through your path. And you play through a predetermined amount of rounds, and the closer you get to 10, the better off you score. That is the main way to play. You can also play this in a competitive version where you present your clues to the player to your left, and then you guess the clues of the player to your right. So you're, instead of like a group discussion about it. I have not tried that one, but I have done the team play, and that is where you're playing in teams of 2, where you're just guessing each other's in a group of 6 or a group of 4. I would say it works best in the presented variant where the whole table is working on it together. It feels more fun, and it feels like you're getting a little bit more of that shared discussion, which is where, the real fun of the game is. I think this is a totally decent word game, and I would be happy to play it, and I may even bring it with me to Dice Tower West because it has that novelty. The theme, man, I feel like the theme does it a disservice. Like, people who might like word games are like, I don't want to be Frodo over here, or Gandalf or whatever. Like, I just want to play a word game. That's where the lack of a theme sometimes is more inviting than what we have here. With that said, it's fine. It's fun. I'm glad I've played it. I like all of the games in this genre. I will play, and I think we will all play pretty happily. What did you guys think about trying Mystic Paths?
I mean, after I played it, I enjoyed it, and I felt like I could see myself playing it again. But I also suspected that it would land where it seems to have landed for you, where it's like, yeah, it's fun. It has a sort of level of novelty to it. It's like an interesting take on word games where you have even this like spatial element, but I didn't think it was going to ever replace something like Codenames or ever be one of like the upper echelon word games that I'd go to, but one that I would not ever turn down. It's just sort of like, yeah, interesting twist. I'll play it. I don't think I would very often call for it, but yeah.
I think it's really hard when your competition in the space is Codenames, right? Like, if everything is compared to one of the best games ever made, then that's a pretty heavy back foot. But I did like it. Like, it's novel, and I think just that element of, I hesitate to call it like three-dimensional thinking, but that little step of just like, okay, how do I get to the path I know when I'm unsure about the steps before that? That element of trying to hone in on the word that you're certain is the one that you know the most about, and then trying to figure out in like increasing order of certainty to make a path that works. I think there's something clever there, and like, I dug it. I think it's susceptible to a problem that Codenames doesn't have, which is that your options are limited by the cards you have in your hand, and sometimes those cards are magical and make perfect sense, and sometimes you just look at them and are like, there's no way I'm going to get someone to guess Genghis Khan with one of these cards I have in my hand. You know, like, it's just...
what is the word you just said?
Genghis Khan? I think that's correct.
Is that a flavor of taffy? Genghis Khan?
We would go with Genghis.
Oh, yeah. I think it's Genghis, isn't it?
It might be. It probably is.
Genghis?
I think it is Genghis, but I don't know.
The Americanized version is definitely Genghis Khan for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, confirmed. not just in the vague land, but everywhere in this country. Yeah, I think, Neelan, though, like, that is really how it feels different than Codenames 2, is like, you have the cards in your hand and nothing is good, but this is good enough. And then the 2 and the 3, like the 2 after the first one, you know, so you're almost evaluating each clue that you give in the context of the 3 to 5 options that the player has. And like, tall may not work, but there's only one person there. And so if your friends aren't dumb, they hopefully will get there. And that's sometimes fun, is to take that like leap. I guess that's similar to the leap you take in Codenames, except you have to be less clever,
right,
in order to do it. So there are often times where I feel like my first word I take a flyer on, and I'm like, they're going to get it because these other two are so good.
Right.
And that has never worked for me. It has always been fairly disastrous. But yeah, I mean, if you like word games, you should try this. And it feels like it's in the genre, it's in the ballpark, and worth trying. But probably one I will move on from eventually after we play it one or two more times. That is Mystic Paths by R&R Games.
So before we move on, just a quick reminder that we are right now at Dice Tower West. We're at Dice Tower West. We're at Dice Tower West. We're at Dice Tower West. Come on, everybody.
We're at Dice Tower West.
Dice Tower West.
And if you are here, if you are in the Vague Lands yourself, head on over to BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord, where we have a dedicated Dice Tower West channel just for organizing meetups, get-togethers, games. And if you're there, and if you see us, say hey. We might have a little bit of something to give you. And Mark is always willing to break out the Biblios he carries on a belt loop.
A woman has been surgically implanted into my hip.
Wow. So it's never that far away from you, even when you shower.
That's right. You never know when you want to look at a monk, especially when you're showering.
The other thing that I want to mention before we move on is we want to revisit the much-loved listener all-time top 20 games. This was something we did last year. We put a call out for you to send us your 10 favorite games in an ordered list, and we will collate all of that data into what we consider to be the collaborative Board Game Barrage listener top 20 of 2022. So yeah, please head on over to BoardGameBarrage.com/top20 to submit your lists. That's BoardGameBarrage.com/top20. Okay, so let's get into a hot question to close out the show.
Whoa.
Sorry,
what?
whoa. I don't know. Yeah, wow.
How could you?
Genghis Khan?
Yeah, Genghis Khan. Let's get into a hot question to close out the show. Here's the question I have for you, and something that comes to mind a lot whenever I take a game to someone's place and find myself suddenly at a loss for how to explain the rules to that game. How many games do you think that you could comfortably pull off your shelf and teach to a brand new group of gamers without having to consult the rules?
Wow, this is tough. I fear the answer is way lower than people might think.
Right.
like in the under 10.
And let's have some like caveats here, like setups. We all have a friend Dean who is like ridiculously good at minutia setup details. But let's like say like how many cards each player gets, that sort of thing, excluded.
Right. Actually, the meat and bones of the game.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this scientifically, as I always do everything on the show, very scientifically by the numbers, fact-based logic here. I'm looking through my games played on BG Stats. If you don't have BG Stats app, you should get it. And I think that the number is probably in the neighborhood of, without consulting the rulebook, 35 to 40, I think.
And what's the heaviest game that you think you could just off the cuff teach?
Blood Rage I could teach.
Okay.
Yokohama I could teach. I've played that a lot recently.
How much does it cost to invade with a leader in Blood Rage?
Free. Leaders are free.
God damn it.
Don't try it. That's a good question, though. The heaviest game, I'm trying to look here.
Yeah.
The heaviest game I could teach.
What's funny with me in response to that, Callan, is I actually think that the two above lightweight games I think that I could teach the best are reasonably heavy games. That I think A Feast for Odin, I probably know backwards. And I actually think I could teach Through the Ages without consulting the rulebook at all. Like, I've just played it enough that I feel like I could do that.
How much does it cost to invade with a leader, Neelan?
Still free.
I think that I will come clean and be the lowest of the low here. I really think it's closer to 10. You know, I think, funnily enough, I promised Monique that I would teach her how to play Innovation at Dice Tower West, and I was like, I should just re-look at how many achievements do I need in a 2-player game without an expansion. And that is my number 1 game. I think I have a very generously put fluid memory where I keep all the words and things that I need in it, you know, for when I need it, and then I dump them. They're gone. But yeah, I can't even, the heaviest game that I could teach without rules, oh man, it's going to be quite light.
I also want to clarify that I think that those are the only 2 heavy games that I could comfortably teach. I actually think my number is fairly low as well, but those 2 are just exceptions for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that speaks to, you know, we're playing new games pretty often, but it is always astounding to me how everyone else is sort of just like not reaching for the rule book. And I feel like I have an hour of homework before I get to game night, every game night, forever.
And like sometimes like it's even just that, in my case, leads to embarrassment. Like I've had situations, just like this past weekend, where I learned For Science, not a very complicated game, the day before teaching it, and then at the teach, two things. I realized as I was breaking it out, I'd left the rule book at home, which was great.
Oh, no.
But B, I was like, there were a lot of weird little persnickety details about this that I somehow have completely forgotten, despite literally having read the rules yesterday. And when I got home and just like skimmed through the rule book, there's definitely stuff I forgot to explain, which, you know, is not great. But it sometimes is just bizarre how little that stuff will stick in your head, even after like a short amount of time.
I think this is another sort of advantage of playing games on BGA. In addition to BGA allowing you to sort of see aspects of a game that you wouldn't have seen upon playing it once or twice. You know, you play a game 3 or 4 or 5 times on BGA, and it can sometimes reveal aspects of the game you didn't notice. It also naturally makes you more comfortable with the game's rules for the most part. And so that's another aspect of BGA that I really enjoyed. I feel like I have some of these games down that I normally would not have.
See, I don't think that's true. I think that's completely false. I think you're a liar.
How's that?
You're a liar. What do you mean? The BGA, you push a button and all the cards go and then the rules have been resolved. I played a game of El Grande and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I'm clicking on stuff, but I'm not winning.
I mean, I'm not clunding these games. Whenever I play
I know how to play El Grande. You think I don't know how to play El Grande?
Sounds like you don't.
Are you kidding me?
You just sounded like you said you don't know what you're doing.
That is not what I said. Run the tape back. I did not, in fact, say that. No, Board Game Arena, like, you click on stuff and then it resolves. Like, Neelan and I are playing a new game, Sobek,
yeah.
Sobek for 2 players,
right.
And I still don't know how the game ends because all of a sudden, back and forth, and the game has ended. And I've played 3 games of it.
I know, but okay, but
Do you think I have more familiarity with how the game ends
you have to
because
read
of
the rules
BGA?
first.
Yeah, I was going
Are
to
you
say,
a liar?
Is there any part of this where you are actually consulting the rules, though?
Because,
Kellen?
yeah, that's an important component to learning the game is actually reading the rules.
I think you guys are misunderstanding what fluid memory means.
I do have that, though. I like the most recent time that this has like stood out in regard to BGA is having returned to Castles of Burgundy after a long time having not played it. I enjoy Castles of Burgundy well enough, and there was a period of time where I played a few times in quick succession physically, but when I recently loaded it up for the first time on Board Game Arena in one of our recent tournaments, I was like, how does any of this work again? Like, it just had completely eluded me. But now, having played 2 games of it recently, in this tournament even, I actually have this feeling I won't ever forget it. It's by virtue of like having to click through it and check the rules on little things. I just find it hard to believe I would ever forget how it works now. Maybe that's a delusion. I don't know.
2 liars in the red tank. That's the name of the episode. Lock it in.
It could also just be this aspect of even just seeing it in a different context, right? I feel like something about learning something 2 different ways does a lot to like reinforce. They often say that like one of the best ways to learn something is to both teach it and be taught it, and then once you've done that, you just have enough of 2 different perspectives on it to like really retain it. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that. I feel I'm often in the position where I am the teacher of a game because it's either typically the game that I've acquired that we want to cover or talk about, or just a game I've bought recently. And sometimes I just find that is not a good way for me to retain any information about it. I sometimes feel like maybe I'm better at retaining information about games that I've been taught than ones I'm teaching, which is also like weirdly antithetical to, I think, a lot of conventional thinking. Like, I think most people would think that if you're going to do one of those things in order to retain it, then teaching it is typically the best way to like retain that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like games that I've taught I have a better grasp of, but it's interesting. And I do think the idea of being taught and teaching would make it firmer in your memory.
I think that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you all for listening. Please, once again, if you're in Vagueland, Las Vegas for Dice Tower West, please come and hang out with us. You can find out where and what we'll be doing at BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord. Hang out in the Dice Tower West channel, organize some games with some of the lovely Board Game Barragers that will be there. Also, if you want to submit your top 10 favorite games for our future listener top 20 list, that's at BoardGameBarrage.com/top20. Otherwise, you can find us on all of our social media or email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. Thank you to Heart Society for our intro music. What's on your mind, kid? Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Right. Bonus hot question, and you can't explain it. No explanations allowed. Of the 3 of us, who is the best board game teacher? I'll do the countdown.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. All right, we're saying the name after 3. 3, 2.
Well, you said after 3, then you said started with 3.
Mark, did it make sense? Were you following me? Was it clear when we were going to say the name?
Okay.
Was it clear when you were supposed to say Kellen?
Okay, so on the
count of
8.
Someone's about
7.
to get their heart broken.
That's not what happened. I'll do the countdown. All right, now Neil, you said. Oh, Christina's going to say something, but we'll see.
All I heard from here was Callan saying, okay, let's say the answer. Who's the best teacher? 3, 2, 1. And then he said Mark.
No, I didn't. What?
I got it on
3,
tape.
2, 1. Mark.
That sounds right to me.
Out of context. Out of context. All right, read the outro. Let's do the bonus. And